we are picking up in Rita Skeeter's Scoop, which is chapter 24. We're going to actually pick up on 452, but I just want to make one comment. 451. They're at the Three Broomsticks. I should not close this door yet. Rita Skeeter has outed Hagrid as being half giant, and Hermione just goes after her. Make comments about her writing about Hagrid and such, and then she brings up Ludo Bagman, and Rita Skeeter says, I already turned the page. Sit down, you silly little girl. Don't talk about things you don't understand. I know things about Ludo Bagman that would make your hair curl. Not that it needs it. Okay? We're just going to leave that there. We'll talk about that later. So, 452, sorry. So after this interchange, this conversation, so to speak, with Rita Skeeter, they go back to Hogwarts, and they go to Hagrid's hut. Bang on the door, because Hagrid hasn't shown up for class. Hermione says, you got to let us in, blah, 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 blah. Dumbledore opens the door. He welcomes them in. In 453, Harry says, in response to Dumbledore, Hermione, Harry, and Ron still seem to want to know you, judging by the way they're attempting to break down the door. Harry, of course we want to know you. You don't think anything that Skeeter cow. Sorry, Professor. He looks at Dumbledore. I've gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said, Harry. Why that little calls Rita Skeeter a cow, Dumbledore pretends not to hear. Why? Why does... Man, my brain is just fried. I almost said, why does Voldemort do that? Why does Rowling do that?
To show their relationship, it's kind of like, it's a closer relationship.
Okay, possibly. Has something to do with the lecture. I wasn't able, the talk we weren't able to do on Thursday because I had to leave, but that was included in the one I did that morning. Kind of begins book 2, but really begins in book 3. Rowling is trying to inculcate in her readers certain modes of behavior, common courtesy, manners, for example. Should Harry be referring, morally speaking, should Harry be referring to Rita Skeeter as a fat cow or an old cow? No, it's not nice, Does he say fat cow or just old cow? Skeeter cow. Threw in my own terminology. And Dumbledore essentially does what? He forgives it in this scene. I didn't hear what you said, Harry. Don't worry about it. Okay? Harry says, Hagrid, how could you think what we'd care what that... Pause. He wants to say cow probably, but he says woman wrote about you. Dumbledore, living proof of what I've been telling you, Hagrid. I've shown you the letters from the countless parents who remember you from their own days here, telling me in no uncertain terms that if I sacked you, they would have something to say about it. Back up for a moment. How long has Hagrid been there?
Since at least 50 years.
We don't know that literally, and here's why. Book 2, Chamber of Secrets, the events that happened before happened 50 years ago, right? Hagrid was what year? He was a third year, 50 years ago. So Hagrid is now 63 in Chamber of Secrets. Goblet of Fire, Hagrid is now 65 because it's 2 years later. So book 3, Voldemort was 2 years older, so he is 50 years ago. Book 2, Voldemort's 65, now Voldemort is 67. We're going to find out later that shortly after Voldemort, Tom Riddle, leaves Hogwarts, Dumbledore becomes headmaster. We don't know exactly how many years. Dumbledore is not headmaster at this time. When Tom Riddle opens the Chamber of Secrets, he's just professor of what?
Is it transfiguration or?
Transfiguration. Okay? So we're not told this literally, but it's kind of like, a preparatory step to becoming the next headmaster. Teach transfiguration. Probably if you teach divination, not going to happen. Okay? So, sometime between Hagrid's third year and trying to think, so Tom Riddle's fifth year then. 5 years maybe? Maybe a little bit longer, but we're not sure. Dumbledore becomes headmaster. So probably safe to say at least 35 or 40 years. Okay? Because at some point we're going to find out very short, we don't get the time frame again. Third year, what happens to Hagrid? He gets expelled. He has to go back home and live with his dad. At some point, after Dumbledore becomes headmaster, Hagrid's father dies. Dumbledore, it's implied, immediately brings Hagrid back to Hogwarts to be the gamekeeper and keeper of the keys. All right? So, back to where we were. 454. Dumbledore says, I could show you all the letters that people, saying what's going to happen if I don't bring you back. Hagrid, not all of them. Really? Not all, of course. If you're waiting for universal popularity, he says, you'll be here for a very long time. What's the very long time? I think I've used this term before. In Old English studies, that's called litotes. That's understatement. It is exaggerated understatement. How long a time will Hagrid be waiting? Until he's dead. Okay? So, he gives examples of, Dumbledore does. He gets letters every week of people complaining about things. Hagrid, you're not half giant. Hagrid's introducing a problem. That was introduced originally by Rita Skeeter. Okay? Harry, Hagrid, look what I've got for relatives. Are the Dursleys giants? Are the Dursleys Nazis? Are the Dursleys pick your evil group? No. What are they? Let's use a word Ron would use. They're gits. It's never defined.
I think it means it's like correlates to idiots.
Yeah. Idiot, moron, jerk, all those kinds of things. Okay? What does Hagrid mean when he says, you're not half giant? Back to Chamber of Secrets. Flourish and blots. Malfoy says something. Malfoy and Arthur are going back and forth. Malfoy says something. I didn't think you could stoop even lower than you. And Arthur jumps him. What does Hagrid say when he breaks up the fight? You shouldn't have done it, Arthur. Why? No Malfoy's mirth it. At least I didn't say Walfoy. No Malfoy's worth it. And then he says, everybody remember? Bad blood. Rotten to the core. He's saying the Malfoys are rotten to the innermost of their being. Okay? You're not half giant. What's Hagrid mean?
It's like saying that you don't have the blood of bad people in you. Like, they're rude and it's because they chose to be.
You're really close, and maybe you're just using different terminology than I'm using. Yeah, I think you're right. So what's he saying about himself?
He also has bad blood.
I have bad blood in me. What's his bad blood? This. Okay? Dumbledore, excellent point. Look at my brother. Arrested for what? Practicing inappropriate charms on a goat. It opens up all kinds of weird possibilities, Okay? What's he saying? Even in my family, there's an oddball. Come back and teach, Hagrid. Hermione says, we miss you. So Dumbledore says, almost, metaphorically rips up his letter of resignation. I don't accept it. I want you back in class first thing Monday. All right? So, Hagrid says, tears running, down his face, page 455. Great man, Dumbledore. Great man. Ron. Yeah, he is. Can I have one of those cakes? Ron's just, I'm hungry. Because Ron's always hungry. Hagrid, help yourself. He's right, of course. You're all right. I've been stupid. My old dad would have been ashamed of the way I've been behaving. Never shown you a picture of my dad, have you? So he goes and he picks up a photo of a short wizard with Hagrid's crinkled black eyes beaming as he sat on top of Hagrid's shoulder. Hagrid's a good 7 or 8 feet tall. He'd just been accepted into Hogwarts, he tells us. Now, that could mean this is before he actually starts at Hogwarts. This could be like maybe his birthday is the first half of the year, right? Because you have to be 11. Sucks if you don't turn 11 until September 2nd, because you have to start the next year, all right?
I saw my little brother, he's September 3rd.
Say that again?
He's September 3rd, my little brother, so he's like...
So is my daughter's. Yeah, so you don't have to wait till you're almost 12, right? So, here he is, 11 years old, because it was just after he got accepted, or into Hogwarts, and he's 7 or 8 feet tall. That's about 82 inches. Another 2 inches would be 7 feet. Okay? So he's that tall at 11 years old. How tall is he going to be by the time he's 18, 19? 12, 14, 15 feet? Probably something like that. Okay? Going to really be really big. So his father's sitting there. And I don't know that J.K. Rowling is intending this. But if you're Catholic, there's probably a good chance, or if you've known Catholics, there's probably a good chance, one of them is wearing what's called a St. Christopher medal. St. Christopher. What's the image that goes with his name? It's a giant carrying the Christ child on his shoulder. I don't know that there's any connection, but that image at least traces back to that, right? So, Dad was dead chuffed. Thought I might not be a wizard, see? Why? 'Cause me mom. Even though Voldemort says, I'm not just a man, he doesn't mean I'm not human. It means I'm wizard, right? You have to be human to be a witch or a wizard. Dad thought, I wasn't magical. Why? Because of me mom. Mom's giantess. So, but at least he never saw me expelled. Died, see, in me second. Oh, I forgot about that with my first thought. Died in his second year. So Hagrid is expelled and seemingly doesn't have to leave. It's Dumbledore who gets him to allow to be stayed. Gets him to be allowed to stay. Wow. I should just retire today. 455. Dumbledore was the one who stuck up for me after Dad went. Got me the gamekeeper job. Trusts people, he does. Gives them second chances. That's what sets him apart from the other heads. We're going to meet another head later on. We're going to meet a couple, actually. Gives them second chances. Where else in other books that we've read have we seen second chances?
Gollum.
Louder?
Gollum.
Gollum and
Saruman.
last 3 chapters of The Lord of the Rings. They're making their way back, and what do we see? We see Gandalf et al. Run into Saruman. Gandalf offers him first, second, third, fourth chances. When is the last second chance that Saruman is offered? When Frodo kicks him out of Bag End and says, just go. Okay? Why? I have not much hope that he can find his cure, but there's some, he says. I think there's got to be a reason why both J.K. Rowling and Tolkien are doing that. So he goes on. He'll accept anyone at Hogwarts. Notice, anyone gets qualified as long as they've got the talent. What's meant by the talent?
Magic.
As long as they're magical. They have to be magical. No, don't say that. I almost said something that would give something away. Those people can turn out okay, even if their families weren't, well, all that respectable. So this is Hagrid saying this without any prompting from anybody else. Put those words alongside what Hagrid said in Flourish and Blots in Book 2. Rotten to the core. Bad blood. That book, Hagrid seems to be saying, if you're bad blood, what's going to happen? No good. No good can come of that. Here, maybe you don't come from such a great family. Then what? You can change. How many of you have seen, well, I kind of consider it to be one of Heath Ledger's best films? Oh, don't do that. I had it right there. A Knight's Tale. Okay? Based on Chaucer. What's that Knight's Tale entirely about?
Him being like low-born and pretending to be a knight so that he can.
And pretending to be a knight, and what happens at the end? The Black Prince says, as Will is in the stocks, you tilt against those you shouldn't, meaning you joust against those you shouldn't. He's talking about himself. You antagonize those you shouldn't. His point there is, dude, you're low-born. Your father's a common laborer. You shouldn't be doing this stuff. But your men are loyal to you. They love you. And he says, and that is noble. In other words, he makes the point, and it's the exact same point Chaucer makes throughout the Canterbury Tales. Nobility has nothing to do with birth. Nobility has everything to do with how you interact with others. Okay? And he says, because of that, he then publicly announces, I've had my royal genealogist look into his background, and he is descended from noble blood. Pulls out his sword, and whop, whop, you are now Sir Will Thatcher, so that he can engage in the list and win the hand of his true love. Right? What's Hagrid saying? He doesn't literally come out and go, I was wrong in the Chamber of Secrets. But he is saying, if you're born into a poor family, not poor monetarily, poor in spirit, a low family, you can rise to great heights. How did Harry spend his first 10 years? First 11 years. Being abused, and he lived with what kind of people? Horrible. They're rotten. They're abusers of children. We're going to find out. Which book? Book 6. Dudley is also abused by his parents, just in a different way. Okay? He knows people can turn out okay, even if their families weren't well, all that respectable. But some don't understand that. There's some who'd hold it against you. There's some, and now what's he doing? Some would say they've only got big bones. Madame Maxime. Okay? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looking at, what's he talking about? Harry and Ron should have an understanding of it. You know what, Harry? When I first met you, page 456, you reminded me a bit of me. Mom and Dad gone, feeling like you wouldn't fit in, not sure you were up to it. Now look at you, school champion. I want you to win, Harry. I'd love you to win. Why? It'd show them all. Show them all what? You don't have to be pure blood to do it. Okay? What did Tom Riddle, the ghost, whatever, memory Tom Riddle, tell Harry when they were down in the Chamber of Secrets about himself and Harry? Harry brings it up in the debriefing scene with Dumbledore later on. He said that we're alike. What's one of the first things that he compares himself to Harry with? We're both half-bloods. Is Harry a half-blood?
No, but isn't it like considered that if one of your parents is muggle-born, then you're technically a half-blood for some reason?
That has to be it. Okay, what I mean by that is that's not stated. But that's the inference we make. Why? James is what?
Pure blood.
He's a wizard. He has magical ability. Lily is what? She's a witch. She has magical ability. You're a mudblood if you're born from people who don't have any magical ability. You're a mixed blood if one of your parents doesn't have magical ability. That's the way it's usually described in the book, or books. Both of Harry's parents have magical abilities. So what's being got at? There's obviously a huge difference between that and that. Why? Because to be pure blood means what? To be 100%, so to speak, Native American means, or to be 100% Sioux, Native American, S-I-O-U-X. What does that mean? None of your ancestors ever married a Cheyenne, or a Shoshone, or Cherokee, or pick any other one. 100. Really? How possible is that? How likely is that?
Extremely unlikely.
Where's this ideology come from?
Elitism.
Well, extremely that. But within the, not literally within the books, but the idea behind what Rowling is getting. This is the Aryan nonsense of Hitler. Because Aryan, what Hitler was talking about with the master race, the pure race of Germans, is 100% German blood. No dot, no tincture of French or anything else. Go ahead.
Wasn't, like, Hitler not?
Yes, he had Jewish ancestry.
Yeah. Isn't that comparable with Voldemort being like, I only want purebloods, but I'm a half-blood, but I don't want them to know?
Yeah, that's part of the inconsistency. That's part of the, not inconsistency, what's the word I want? Hypocrisy, okay, of this ideology. Hitler wanted to surround himself and create a race of, to use someone that shows my age, Dolph Lundgrens. 6'7", 6'8", chiseled features, blonde hair, blue eyes, brilliant, PhD I think it is in physics, before he started fighting with Stallone in the stupid Rocky movies and such. Okay, I mean, all this, rather than, Hitler was like 5'6", 5'7", Tom Cruise height, mixed race, so to speak. So, Harry says, great, that's it, I'm doing great. In response to the question, how are you doing with your egg? How is he doing? Not good at all. So we get the next chapter, the egg night, which we're going to go through quickly. Harry takes the egg, opens it under the water, moaning Myrtle, purring, creeping around out there, page 463. And he hears, "Come seek us where our voices sound, we cannot sing above the ground. While you're searching, ponder this, we've taken what you'll sorely miss. An hour long you'll have to look and to recover what we took, but past an hour, the prospect's black. Too late, it's gone, it won't come back." How does Harry interpret that?
He goes, they're literally gonna die if I don't get them.
It doesn't say anybody's going to die. It just says they won't come back. There's a big difference between that. Okay? So, Harry gets caught by Dumbledore and Moody, not Dumbledore, Snape and Moody as he's leaving. Harry tells Moody about the Marauders map. Moody asks if he can borrow it because Harry tells him, "Guess who I saw in Snape's office on the map? Barty Crouch." Okay? Should I ask this question? I did not ask this question in my first class. Why do Fred and George never see something they should see when they own?
It was always confusing to me how they saw Peter Pettigrew sleeping in Ron's bed. They should have seen that for like 4 years, and they just never brought it up. They were like, "Oh, a dude's sleeping in my brother's bed." So bring it up."
Okay, they should bring it up because that's a little weird. Sorry, I mean, that's not appropriate in any way because Peter Pettigrew's supposed to be what?
Dead.
He's also lonely.
He's also older, and Ron is like 11.
Weird. Okay, just in any, well, I can't even say anymore in any world because no,
Her older
there's,
brothers also had the rat too.
yeah, Percy did.
Yeah.
Percy did.
Like,
Okay.
there's. How did they not?
But they didn't necessarily have the. We don't know when they come into possession of the map. My point is, why doesn't even Ron see when they get the map later? Take the map. Why don't Fred and George see Peter Pettigrew? Because they don't apparently. Okay. Harry sees Barty Crouch. Right. I'm just going to leave that alone for a second. I just wanted to raise that question because I think it could be an instance of bad writing. So, what's the second task?
Getting them from the bottom of the lake.
You got to go into the lake and you have to rescue your hostage. All right? So, Harry does rescue Ron. Why is Ron the thing Harry's going to miss the most? He's his best friend. Really? Was he his best friend after Harry's name came out of the Goblet of Fire?
Yeah. Well,
Yes, well.
yes. I mean, there's still that.
What did Ron do between Harry coming down after his name comes out of the Goblet of Fire to the common room that evening to the actual first task?
He didn't talk to him.
He ditched him. What makes Ron come back to Harry? It's not the other way around. Ron sees the first task and realizes what? You could have died. Even though the rule said no one will die. He couldn't have died if the rules, so to speak, were to be followed. Second task, Harry thinks what? Ron could have died. Okay? So we're going to skip a bunch. Harry gets down to the bottom of the lake, and what does he see? He's the first one there. There's Hermione chained up. There's Ron chained up. And who else? Gabrielle Delacour, Fleur's little sister. Okay? And what does Harry do?
He gets Ron, and then when Fleur doesn't show up, he gets Gabrielle.
So he
Rescues.
waits. He waits. And when Fleur finally doesn't show up, are we literally told how long? No, but it's apparently a while, because he is well outside the time limit, right? Cedric's first. He does it within a minute of the time limit. That is, he's outside the time limit, but still a minute. Then Victor, okay, and then Harry last, seemingly a long time later. Harry explains to Ron what he was doing, and Ron says, 53. I hope you didn't waste time down there acting the hero. It's the first time that's ever kind of been said about Harry. Acting the hero. Does the school know what happened in the Shrieking Shack? No. Does the school know what happened in the Chamber of Secrets? No. Does the school know what happened when Harry, Ron, and Hermione went down the trap door? Yes. Because Dumbledore says, of course what happened is a secret, which means everybody knows. Okay? So, points are awarded. 506. All right? And we're told, we do it from last first. Fleur gets how many points?
25.
Out of 50. She scores a 50% for essentially doing what? She put her name on the exam. That's it. Okay? Cedric also used the bubblehead charm. He came back 1 minute outside the time limits. He gets what? He gets 47 points. That is, man, so close. Okay? Crumb uses a transfiguration charm. He's second to return with his hostage. He gets 40 points. We're not told how long he takes. And then we get Harry. And we're told he was first to reach the hostages, and he delayed to make sure all were safe. Most of the judges, there are 5 judges, right? Barty Crouch, Ludo Bagman, and the 3 heads of the schools. Most of the judges feel that this shows moral fiber and merits full marks. Does that mean Madame Maxime agrees? Full marks? Could be. After all, who represents her school? Fleur. Fleur's little sister was down there. She's thinking, this is something good that we ought to encourage. In other words, these judges, the majority, say that moral fiber is something to be rewarded, is something to be exemplified, something to be praised. Kind of the Dumbledore / the books teaching, trying to inculcate these mores and values. Okay? So, next chapter, Padfoot returns. We're going to skip a bunch. It begins with what? A new scoop by Rita Skeeter. Okay? And page 513 and following, Hermione starts getting hate mail, Scarlet Woman, all that kind of stuff. They meet up with Sirius. 5:25. They're talking about Ludo Bagman and such. And Winky. And Sirius asks, Ron's talking about how Hermione's obsessed with house elves. Sirius shuts him up. When the dark mark had been conjured and the elf had been discovered holding Harry's wand, what did Crouch do? Went to look in the bushes, says Harry. No one there. Sirius, of course. He'd want to pin it on anyone but his own house elf. That is, he went to look for what? The scapegoat. Somebody else to blame it on. And all they could find. Hermione, yeah, and he sacked her just because of that. Ron, give it a rest. Sirius, she's got the measure of Crouch better than you have, Ron. She has the measure of Crouch. That is, she has looked at Crouch's character and judged him. And he's saying, and she's judged him rightly. You want to know what a man's like? Take a good look at how he treats his inferiors, not his equals. How does Lucius Malfoy treat his inferiors?
Like dirt.
my, boy, you've lost me my, talking about Dobby. And he's getting ready to do what? In the book. Wait, I'm going to mix these two up. I know it. In the book, he starts to pull out his wand. In the film, he pulls out his wand and starts to go, he starts to say Avada Kedavra in the film version. Okay? How does he treat Dobby? Look at what Dobby says when he first meets Harry. He slams his ears in the oven doors. Why? Because he's misspoken about his master. And Harry says, man, and I thought I had it bad. Talking about living with the Dursleys. Malfoy doesn't treat those lower than him very well. How about Dumbledore?
Look at what Hagrid just said about him. He treats, or at least tries to treat everyone the same regardless of where they came from.
He treats them as what? Kind of equals. What about Snape? How does Snape treat Neville? Not well. How does Snape treat Harry? Not well. How does Snape treat Hermione? Say what you want about Hermione. Brain-wise? Anybody close? No. Okay? All these examples are important because this idea is going to be brought out later. What about James and Sirius?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh like that.
No, it's okay.
Not very well.
Well, we get some ideas even in the earlier books. Not literally secrets, but kind of secrets. In his private lessons with Harry, does Lupin tell Harry about James and Snape?
But James didn't treat her well.
We're going to hear some more in this book, and then we're going to hear a whole bunch more in the 5th book. So, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors, not his equals. So he goes on and he starts doing what? Sirius starts talking to himself because he's working through issues. That is, he's working through things he's seen, things he's heard, and he's trying to make sense out of all this. And they talk about Crouch. Harry, you know Crouch? Oh, yeah. Top of 526. He sent me to Azkaban without a trial. What's one of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution?
Innocent until proven guilty.
And connected with that,
You have the right, basically you have a right to a trial.
you have right to a trial by a jury of your peers. Okay? Supreme Court ruled on an issue just a couple of years ago where people were not given rights to a jury trial because the government had set up what are called administrative courts, where a judge, just a judge, determines guilt or innocence. The Supreme Court said, cannot do that. I think there were supposed SEC violations, Securities and Exchange Commission, and people were being found guilty by a judge, and somebody said, this violates the Constitution. Okay? And the Supreme Court said, and I think it was a unanimous decision. So, far right, far left came together, said, nope, got to have a jury of your peers. Where do we, the United States, get that idea from? Where did the founders and the people who wrote the Constitution, Madison primarily, get that from?
I want to say Rome, but I don't know if that's right.
Nope. Well, Rome does have it. Magna Carta, Latin for the Great Charter, 1215. When Prince John was forced by his barons to sign a list of rights because he was trying to deny barons certain rights. One of those rights was the right to a trial by a jury of one's peers. Now, when that was written, the word peer had a very specific meaning. It has a slightly different meaning in 1793 when the Constitution is ratified. has a very different meaning today. In 1215, it meant if you are a duke, okay, and you're arrested, you deserve a trial by jury of other dukes. If you're an earl, a lesser rank, you deserve a trial by jury of earls. If you are a peasant, your jury is supposed to be composed of peasants. Look at that idea and apply it to today. That would imply, that would say that I should be, if I'm prosecuted for something, I should be tried by a jury of my peers. That is, other men and women in my so-called station in life. That could be socioeconomic, it could be age, it could be job, other professors. Pray that I never get tried by other professors because they'll all call me guilty. What? It would mean not by you all. Similarly, if you got prosecuted for something, I should not be asked to be on your jury, according to that language. Okay? So, notice the difference between our world and the wizarding world. One of my colleagues who I brought along to help teach this, he and I had hours of conversation about these stupid books. And he brought up this whole thing about justice in the wizarding world. He was sent to Azkaban without what? An adversarial situation to try to prove his innocence. See, there's a reason why trials are adversarial. That is, the two sides are enemies. Prosecutor wants to put you in jail. Defense attorney wants to keep you out of jail.
Do you think it's because I'm gonna no, I'm not gonna say that because I'm gonna. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Do you think it's because of how he was a Gryffindor and how he was kind of like exiled from his family? Because other Death Eaters, like not Sirius isn't the Death Eater, but worse people, things that did way worse than him, got a trial, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Like Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah. Okay. Why was he sent? What's he accused of? Not being a Death Eater.
Murdering 13 people. So they basically just went, he basically didn't have a chance to say, I'm not the...
Was there evidence? He was there. He was the one there. Okay. Anyways, he gets sent without any kind of trial. And Harry, Ron, and Hermione are all like, what? You're kidding me. Okay. He goes on and talks about how Crouch used to be head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. What's the head of Department of Magical Law Enforcement in our world? Department of Justice. He was Pam Bondi. Okay? He for the UK, for England, not for Europe, just there. All right? Powerfully magical and power hungry. In other words, he has within him a lot of power. What do you need in order to be able to do that expecto patronum? You've got to be strong. What does Moody say about doing Avada Kedavra? All you students, you couldn't give me a nosebleed. Why? They haven't developed that strength, those powers yet.
So, do you think that I know it doesn't say this in the book. Do you think the reason that he convicted Sirius Black without a trial was because he was power hungry? He wanted to show these are all the people I put behind bars, and so he didn't want there to be a chance of Sirius getting off?
I think that's partially it. I'm going to quibble with one word you used, convicted. He wasn't convicted. There's no trial.
Just thrown in there.
He was just thrown in there.
They just wanted to fill up.
It was just accusation. You were guilty, period. No accusation in trial, okay? So, he goes on. Powerfully magical, and power hungry. What's it mean to be hungry?
Like, just want something so bad.
Take a bite of something and you want more. So he's risen to what level of power? Whew, pretty high. Not a Voldemort supporter. Notice Sirius makes this very clear. Barty Crouch was never a Voldemort supporter. And he's going to say, a couple pages later, how he demonstrates that. What does he do? He sends his own son to Azkaban. He gets a trial first. This is what Barty Crouch Sr. means. Back at the clearing at the Quidditch World Cup, when he says that Amos Diggory has suggested the two people in this clearing who are least likely to be Voldemort supporters are the ones who might have put up this dark mark. One, Harry Potter, you know his story. Me, he says, I assume you remember what? The degrees or extents to which I've gone in my career to show my hatred of the dark arts. What's the extent?
His own son.
I sent my son to jail, to Azkaban. So, Sirius says, no, Barty Crouch was always very outspoken against the dark side. But then a lot of people who were against the dark side, well, you wouldn't understand. You're too young. Ron, he's had enough. He's heard that too many times. That's what my dad said. Try us, why don't you? A grin flashes across Sirius's face. Why? What does he see when he looks at Harry, Ron, and Hermione? Moontail. Moon. That'd be weird. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, Promes. He's like, okay, kid. We'll see if you can take it. And he gives what? He paints a picture. Imagine Voldemort's powerful now. You don't know who his supporters are. You don't know who's working for him. Who isn't. Okay. This little scene, this little description, to give some foreshadowing, this is telling us what Harry is thinking beginning of book 5. This entirely informs Harry's mindset at the opening of book 5. All right? You don't know who his supporters are. You don't know who's working for him and who isn't. You know he can control people. How? Imperious charm. So that they do terrible things without being able to stop themselves. You're scared for yourself, your family, your friends. Every week, news comes of more deaths, more disappearances, more torturing. Ministry of Magic's in disarray. They don't know what to do. They're trying to keep everything hidden from the Muggles. But meanwhile, Muggles are dying too. Terror everywhere. Notice, they're trying to keep it hidden from the Muggles. They're trying to keep it contained. But what's happening? A couple of weeks ago, I had written over here, the Muggle world, the Wizarding world, and I had material, immaterial, spirit, reality. And what is he saying? All these murders and stuff are happening here, and they're trying to keep a lid on what's happening. It's bleeding into the Muggle world. How bleeding? Muggles are dying. They shouldn't be dying. The death should be only occurring here. Okay? This is an important part that leads us into book 5. Because we're going to see early in book 5, Harry's 2 separate existences. Harry Potter, the defeater of Voldemort, Harry Potter, snot-nosed kid who lives at number 4 Privet Drive, come crashing together. Or, another way of looking at it, the veil gets lifted between his nice, sterile living at number 4 Privet Drive and this other world. So he goes on. Times like that bring out the best in some people and the worst in others. Crouch's principles might have been good. I don't know. He rose through the ministry. What does he start doing? He starts allowing harsh measures. Aurors are given new powers. Now they can kill rather than capture, for example. What else? He allows I'm going to use a different term that is in the book. He allows the unallowable curses. He forgives the unforgivable curses. So now can not only Aurors use Avada Kedavra, they can use what? Crucio. The torturing curse. I'm going to get the information out of you. How? I'm going to torture it out of you. They can use Imperio. I would say he became as ruthless and cruel as many on the dark side. In other words, there's multiple kinds of evil. There's the Voldemortian kind, okay? And there's the Barty Crouch side kind. The Barty Crouch kind thinks it's doing what? Good. Okay?
This is when Rowling first introduces like the idea that she does later in the books where Harry's like, I don't trust the Ministry or Voldemort. They're both.
Very much so. Especially when we get to the end of this book. So, he had his supporters. Plenty of people thought he was going about things the right way. Imagine if 9/11 kept happening. Or even smaller forms. We did have other instances of terrorism here. You had the thing in San Bernardino, California. A couple go into a business, I think Christmas party or something like that, shoot up a bunch of people. You had a recruiting station, military recruiting station in Chattanooga. Several Marines were shot. Fort Hood, I had a student whose husband was killed at Fort Hood. She's like 20 years old, and her husband was killed. Okay? Imagine that keeps going on. You don't think there would be people in the United States? And if we knew who was responsible, pretty good idea, 75% likelihood. You don't think there's people who would say, nuke them? I know, I was one of those people 10 years ago. But I know an awful lot of people would say, turn it into a, let's say we knew it was Iran. Turn it into a glass factory. Just turn all that sand into glass. That's his point. A lot of people supported it. And then he mentions Crouch's own son caught with what? With a group of Death Eaters. Nasty little shock for old Barty. Should have spent a bit more time at home with his family, shouldn't he? Notice what Sirius is suggesting. Why does Barty Crouch Jr. associate with Death Eaters? Because his father didn't love him enough. Oh, poor little boy. He had a horrible life. Therefore, he became, what? A mass murderer? Is that why mass murderers become mass murderers? Could be. Some psychologists say that. Rowling's introducing an idea here, okay, that she kind of plays with a bit. And part of the idea is the old psychological, philosophical question, are we a product of nature or nurture? When Hagrid says, book 2, rotten to the core, he's saying nature. Some people are born evil. Born evil. Nurture says, nope, you're made evil. Okay? Scientifically, so to speak, both of those are partially true. There are some people who are born without the capacity to empathize at all with others. I won't say by and large, many of them tend to become sociopaths and serial murderers. There are other people who get treated so horribly in their lives from a young age on, they decide to do what? Beginning 11, 12, 13, 14, they strike out. Take two children, okay? Have one with a wonderful, loving family, wonderful opportunities, lots of books, parents read to the child, good food, healthy exercise, the whole 9 yards. And that child is told every day from the moment it's brought home, to 13 years old. I love you. You're wonderful. You can achieve anything you set out to do. Take another one and do just the opposite. The child is told every day, you're a rotten, lousy piece of you-know-what, excrement. You will never amount to anything. You are the blight of my existence, and why do I let you live here? In other words, Harry. No books, no love, no proper nutrition, no joy in that child's life. I can guarantee you, I've got $45 in my wallet, I would bet you it right now. That second child, what's going to happen around the age of 12 or 13, if not earlier? Where's that person's life going to go? Who is that person going to have a run-in with? The law. Guaranteed. Nurture is very important, okay? So, Harry asked the all-important question. Was he a Death Eater? Did he really do it? No idea. He says, I was in Azkaban when he was brought in. Boy was definitely caught in the company of people I'd bet my life were Death Eaters. So twice now he's mentioned he was in the company of Death Eaters, implying guilt by association. Right? If you get arrested, if there's a bunch of group of people doing things, many of them are doing quote-unquote illegal things, and you are with that group and arrested, you're going to be charged with those same things, even though you may not have done any of those things. That is guilt by association. Supposedly, the law is not supposed to find you guilty for that. You're only supposed to be found guilty for things you personally do. Let's use a real modern example, not J6, that's too. You're one of those people who likes to, vandalize Teslas, let's say. You're with a group of people, and one of them walks along a brand new Tesla and keys the car. Are you guilty for doing that? No, you are not. The person who did it is. I would, again, probably bet you this $45 that there are some jurisdictions in the country that would say, nah, you're an accomplice. Maybe and will say you are a lookout, that kind of thing. Not legally can that be done. So, Hermione, did Crouch try and get his son off? Did he try to get him freed? And seriously, Hermione, I thought you had a good reading of the guy. Of course he didn't. Anything that threatened to tarnish his reputation had to go. Why? What is built upon reputation? Power. What happens as a result?
He doesn't become Minister of Magic.
He does not become Minister of Magic. What is he now? Woohoo! He's the British director of the Olympics. A lot of power there, right? No. Harry, he gave his own son to the Dementors? That's right. I saw him. I saw the Dementors bring him in. And then Sirius says, and he died a year later. Okay? So, they start talking about Snape. Hermione comes to Snape's defense. Snape tried to save you, Harry. Dumbledore trusts Snape, etc. Harry, what do you think, Sirius? Why would he ask Sirius? Well, other than the obvious reason. Sirius was at school when Snape was there, just like Lupin was. Top of 5, 31. They both got a point. That is, Hermione's got a point appealing to Dumbledore's trust. Ron's got a point appealing to Snape's what? His gitness. He's foul. He's rotten, right? What did Quirrell say? He seems the type. Ever since I found out Snape was teaching, 531, I've wondered why Dumbledore hired him. He's always been fascinated by the dark arts. Snape has. Famous for it. Slimy, oil, greasy-haired kid. Now, whose opinion is that? That Snape's. That Sirius's. Is it fact? No. It's his opinion of Snape. Okay? Notice Harry and Ron like what Sirius has just said about Snape. Why? How do we know they like it? Harry and Ron grin at each other because it reinforces their opinions. Confirmation bias. Oh, if Sirius thinks he's a slimy, oily, greasy-haired git, then our thoughts have just been confirmed. It's okay for us to. Snape knew more curses when he arrived at Hogwarts at school than half the kids in 7th year. He was 11 when he arrived. He was part of a gang of Slytherins who nearly all turned out to be Death Eaters. What's his point?
He said he associated with
Guilt by association. Only problem is, we're going to find out in just a few pages, true. He was a Death Eater. Okay? So, we get names mentioned that we're going to see again later in the book and in book 5. They talk about Mad Eye searching and such. Madness of Mr. Crouch. We're going to skip a whole bunch. So, Harry, Ron, and Hermione talk about how Rita Skeeter's getting her information because she relates a conversation or relates information that occurred in a conversation between whom? 2 people. Hermione and Victor Crumb. Nobody else. How'd she get it?
She's a bug.
Well, hold on to that. Harry says, maybe she's got you bugged. Harry's working in our world thinking electronic bugs. Ron's like, what? She has like a flea or something? Hermione starts, it doesn't hit her necessarily immediately, but she starts thinking along those lines. All right? Victor Crumb invites Harry to go for a romantic stroll on the grounds near the Forbidden Forest. Not quite, but why does Victor want to talk with Harry?
He wants to know his relationship with Hermione.
Because of Rita Skeeter's recent plug, so to speak, her scoop. What is your interest in Hermione? Harry's like, what? This is out. Okay. What's this tell us, by the way, about Victor?
he likes me.
What else? Is he a bad guy? No, he's not. Okay. Barty Crouch shows up and he's way out there. I mean, just shrooms and whatever else. Says he needs to see Dumbledore. Harry runs up to get Dumbledore. He runs into Snape. Snape slows him down. Chapter of the Dream. We're going to skip and go to the Pensive. Harry knocks on the door. Crouch is in Dumbledore's office. Moody's in Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore's in Dumbledore's office, etc. Harry goes in. He tells them what he's seen. They all leave. Harry stays there. He sees the sorting hat. He sees the sword of Godric Gryffindor. And then he sees in this cabinet, along the wall, this glowing thing. Cabinet doors are opened. Harry wants to see what this glowing thing is. He looks in it. It's got runes and symbols engraved on it. The surface of it is just a shallow stone basin, kind of like the Mirror of Galadriel, but it's got this silvery stuff moving around. As he looks in it, it kind of solidifies into shape. And then it becomes an object, like the inside of a room. You can see chairs, sees higher chairs, sees space around these central chairs, bends down, he sees chairs over here and chairs over here. It looks like the room within the round basin is square. He wants to see what's in the corners. So what does he do? He keeps bending down closer to it to look into the corners. His nose touches and he finds himself inside this thing. Kind of like what? When he goes into Tom Riddle's diary. Okay? And what does Harry see?
He sees a child. There's Karkaroff.
Who does he see even before that?
Oh,
There's Dumbledore. He sees Karkaroff, and what does Karkaroff start doing? Snitching. Gives off all these names, including Snape. Snape is vouched for by Dumbledore himself, we're told. He gives off Ludo Bagman's name, Rookwood and such. We see Bagman come in. Why does Bagman get off? Why is Bagman acquitted? Possibly, could be, it implies. He is innocent. He's just an idiot. Okay? What's another big reason? Because he's an internationally famous athlete. We don't have, in the United States, not even, Michael Jordan at his height. I don't think is the embodiment of an American kind of ideal. We don't have that kind of sports worship like they do in the UK. Okay? Where certain soccer players, are just, maybe Argentina, like Lionel Messi and Maradona and folks like that. So, he gets released. Then we see Barty Crouch Jr. brought in. He starts crying out to his father. His father disowns him and everything. Cries out to his mother. And Dumbledore appears and gently lifts Harry up by the underside of his left elbow. And they come out of the pensive. Dumbledore explains what it is. Okay? Notice, it sounds exactly like the normal word pensive, which means thoughtful. You're thinking, you're cogitating about something. But it comes from French, pensée, which means thoughts, mind, and sieve, to sift. It's a thought sifter. So Dumbledore teaches Harry how it works and all that. And he says, let me show you. And he pulls a thought out of his mind and puts it in, and what do we see? Bertha Jorkin's body comes up. Okay? You wanted to tell me something. Well, Harry's come to tell him about the dream he had. So, he does. They keep talking. Harry asks, why is my scar hurting me? Dumbledore says, 2 reasons. 1, when Voldemort's nearby. That's 1 reason. 2, when he's really hating on somebody. Well, why does Harry tell him about the dream? What happens? He wakes up and his scar hurts. What was the dream about? Partially, at least.
Voldemort got a message and then got mad at Wormtail and tortured him.
He tortured Wormtail. Okay? So notice what do you need to feel in order to torture someone?
Hatred.
Another option is going to be given in the next book. Okay? So, Dumbledore tells Harry, 601, about Voldemort's previous rise to power. We've heard this alluded to by Sirius, but no names were given. And Dumbledore says, in his previous rise to power, there were mysterious disappearances. And so he says, page 601, Bertha Jorkins, or Yorkins, however you want to pronounce it, has vanished without a trace in the place where Voldemort was certainly known to be last. That was Albania. Okay? We were told in the first book, I think it was the first book, that when Quirrell met Voldemort, it was in Albania. Why would she choose Albania? Of all the nations in the world, there's like 159 different countries in the world. Why Albania? It is a very small, relatively insignificant country. Why not Soviet Russia?
Because she was, I mean, we have, like, in the memory, she was tattling on someone. She was.
Okay, but I think it's about Albania itself. Why would Voldemort go to Albania? Interesting little tidbit. This might have something to do with her answer to that question to the journalist in 2000. When Albania was still communist, it's not anymore, it was the only country in the world, literally the only country, that did not allow freedom of religion, and that was explicitly atheist. Soviet Union was never explicitly atheist. China was never explicitly atheist. North Korea is not explicitly atheist. All three of those said, oh yeah, everybody is free to believe and worship whichever way they want. Okay? Only Albania wasn't. I think that's tied to Voldemort's notion, or Voldemort's ideas, that there is no such thing as good or evil, there's only power. Because religious ideas ultimately deal with good and evil. Okay? So, they keep talking, and Harry asks, 602. The last thing we saw, Barty Crouch Jr. and those other people, those people that they were tried for torturing, were they talking about Neville's parents? Neville never told you why he lives with his grandmother? Nope. And Dumbledore says yes, they were. Frank and Alice Longbottom. They were great Aurors, and they were widely loved by the people. What happened to them? They were tortured into insanity. Remember what Neville does in the second Defense Against the Dark Arts class? He's holding the desk, and Moody brings out the second spider for the Cruciatus Curse, and Neville holds it till his fingers go white. What might, I'm not saying it is, what might that indicate? Neville saw it. Okay? This is about a year after, we're told, Voldemort's downfall. Harry is 1 year and 3 months when Voldemort disappears. We're going to find out later, Neville is born the same summer as Harry. So Neville would be 2 years or so when that happens. Big scientific study just came out that has said conclusively, we do retain the memories we form as infants. We just don't know how to access them yet. I'll bet somebody, Musk probably, is going to come up with something to put into your head that goes, bit, and it hits the part of the hippocampus that holds those earliest memories. Might Neville have a subconscious recollection? I think it's likely. So, Harry asks one more question. Dumbledore says, no more has Professor Snape. Harry asks Bagman, Dumbledore's never been accused of any other dark activities. Right, and nor has Professor Snape. How does Dumbledore know that Harry's going to ask about Snape? Nothing from later books. Yeah, kind of. But. Chamber of Secrets. After Harry first starts hearing these disembodied voices, right? Murder, must kill, blood, He talks to Ron about it. Ron's like, dude, hearing voices even in the magical world, not good. Harry goes to talk to Dumbledore. Dumbledore asks him essentially one question. Harry, about something else. Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all? And we're told Harry has the feeling that Dumbledore can read his mind. And yet he says, no, sir, nothing at all. Okay? Harry starts to ask about Snape. He says, Snape's not been accused of anything. What made you think he'd really stop supporting Voldemort? Notice what that tells us. He had been a supporter of Voldemort. He stopped. Back to Flourish and Blots. Back to Hagrid's hut. Second chances. Second chances. In other words, you can make the right choice. Saruman never does. Does Gollum? Next time you touch me, you will yourself be thrown into the fire. Just throwing this out there. Does Gollum do that because he knows? Does he bite the ring off Frodo's finger because he knows this is the only way for the ring to be destroyed? Some have suggested that is. That there's that part of, I'm going to use the name, when he has those internal debates, that there is that part of Gollum, not Smeagol. Smeagol is the thoroughly bad one, oddly enough. There is still that little part of Gollum that said to Sam, let me live just a little while longer. Just a little while. That he knows, if I get it, what? I will end. What's the I there? Not the Gollum Smeagol part. Sorry, rephrase that. What will end? Okay, along with his life, what?
His Gollum will
Keep going. What is his life? It's just suffering. Okay? So when his suffering ends, the ring ends. That's why, when we talked about it earlier, I mentioned, I think it was St. Thomas Aquinas, that you can do actions that you might not be doing the actions for the right reason, but the actions result in what? A good. Okay? So, Snape has changed, Dumbledore says. Go on to the third task. Skipping. Almost to the end of the third task. Nope, skipping to the end of the third task. Harry and Cedric going first. Harry and Cedric get to the cup. Harry saves Cedric twice during the task. But Cedric is closest to the cup, and Harry is sitting there kind of leaning against the hedge, falling down slowly. His leg is bleeding because he's gotten bitten by the spider. And we're told that Cedric is only feet from the cup. I think Cedric is about 3 feet. He can reach out and touch the stupid thing. Harry says, bottom of 632, take it then. Take it. Cedric doesn't move. He just stands there. He looks at Harry. He turns and looks at the cup. He turns and looks at Harry. You should take it. You should win. Notice, should. It's twice you've saved my neck in here. That's not how it's supposed to work. Should. Supposed to. They're implying this moral kind of oughtness. He felt angry. His leg was very painful. He was aching all over from trying to throw off the spider. And after all his effort, Cedric has still beaten him, just as he'd beaten Harry to Cho, to the ball. What's one of the reasons he wants him to do this? Harry's in pain. He's bleeding. He wants it to end. Not the end, but the one who reaches the cup first gets the points. That's you. Who gets the points if Cedric touches it? Hufflepuff? No. Hogwarts, yay! We both win. Cedric, stepping away from the cup and towards Harry and the spider. No, stop being noble. Is he being noble? What characterizes Hufflepuffs? Loyal, just, true, hard workers, fair. He's being all of those in spades. Just take it and then we can get out of here. You told me about the dragons. I would have gone down. Harry, I had help. You helped me with the egg. Cedric, someone told me about the egg. We're square. He tries to put his weight on the leg. You should have got more points on the second test, says Cedric. You stayed behind. I should have done that. I should have done that. Harry, you're the better man, he's saying. I was the one who was thick enough to take the song seriously. No, he steps over the spider and does what? Cedric was serious. He's walking away from the sword of glory Hufflepuff House hadn't had in centuries. What comes with glory? I think this is related to the theme for the course. Glory is power of a sort. You get raised in estimation, that opens you up to other opportunities, possibilities. Cedric, go on. Both of us, Harry says. We both do it. Why? It's still Hogwarts. Okay. They count to 3. They touch the port key. And boom, they're no longer there. They don't know it's a port key. That's why Cedric asked, do you know it was a port key? Like, anybody give you any secrets about this one too? Nope. Wands out? Cedric asks. Both questions, Cedric. Harry. Why? Harry's been in situations like this before. He's like, this is not good, Cedric. Okay? What are we told? They find themselves, when they apparate via the port key, 6 feet from a headstone. They're in a cemetery. Okay? They see someone walking towards them. This figure stops right in front of the headstone, which means the figure is what? 6 feet from them. Without a warning, Harry's scar burst. Harry hears the voice, kill the spear. Avada Kedavra, a blast of green light. 6:38. He opens his eyes, and there's Cedric lying spread eagle on the ground beside him. The beside him means what? So Harry's standing here, Cedric's standing here, Cedric gets killed, he falls to the ground. Still within 6 feet of the headstone. Exact middle, page 639. Cedric's body was lying some 20 feet away. Yeah, what? How?
Blown back? You think they like when they shot the
No, because it said
No, it
he
never says it gets moved or anything.
he fell beside Harry. What gives? 2 things. Bad writing, first of all. Even worse, editing. And this thing had to go through more than one editing process. All of the editors who edited this should be fired. This is horrible. I used to edit a journal. This is horrible editing. This never should have gotten past anybody. Okay? It's one of those things that Tolkien suggests in the fairy story essay. When the secondary world doesn't follow its own laws, it self-aborts so that the people inside that is reading it go, well, that doesn't make any sense. It would be like Wormtail suddenly pulling out an Uzi and shooting all those people rather than using his wand. Okay? So, we're going to skip a bunch. We see the spell to revive, bring back Voldemort. We see the Death Eaters come back. we hear them talking about, or Voldemort, talking about all the things he did to make sure he would live forever. He talks about those who are missing. He says, one has left me forever, he'll be killed. Okay? One is a coward and fled, he'll be killed. One is his faithful servant who will return. Then he challenges Harry to a duel. When did we last see Harry duel? Louder?
I think I might miss something, but was it with Malfoy? I don't remember.
Which book?
The first time.
Chamber of Secrets. Who taught Harry how to duel? Because Voldemort asked, you've been taught to duel, right, Harry? Who is Harry's why do we keep saying tool? Duel teacher, duel master. And how good was he? But he still knows somehow what to do. Avada, we're going to we're going to come back to it. We'll just stop there. We're only a couple of pages behind my first one. If you haven't started, start. Like, get way the hell into Order of the Phoenix, because this will only take maybe 30 minutes, and then we'll get into Order of the Phoenix on Thursday. I will put up, don't know why, it completely slipped my mind. I will put up a quiz over first half of Goblet of Fire today. It'll be due 2 or 3 days from now.